Hey rail fans, thanks for tuning in. On today's session we're at the workbench because we're going to be making some repairs and doing some upgrades to some rolling stock. The rolling stock that I have chosen for today is the twin pack of the 72-foot center beam flat cars that I purchased a couple of weeks ago on eBay. When I got them, I noticed that there was some broken and some loose parts on them that needed to be fixed. Plus, this is one of the early versions of the center beams. It comes with plastic wheels and plastic couplers, so we at least need to upgrade those particular items and make them run a little bit smoother and a little bit better. The tools that we're going to need in order to make these repairs and do these upgrades are relatively simple, and you probably already have these things on hand. But what we're going to need is we're going to need some sort of a cradle or a foam pad so that we can rest the rolling stock on and not cause any unnecessary damage. We're going to need some screwdrivers. Got a flathead and a Phillips head screwdriver here just in case. My Phillips head screwdriver is magnetic, especially comes in handy with working with these small screws. Going to need a toothpick because the areas that we're going to be gluing are relatively small, so I don't need to put a whole lot of glue on there, especially with the wide tip or the nozzle that's on the glue, so I prefer to dab it onto a piece of paper and then use a toothpick to put the glue on. The other things that we're going to need is obviously our KD couplers and our metal wheels. I say these are KD number 5s. I use on all of my rolling stock. I may go to the Whisker couplers, which I believe is a 1/48, but I like these number 5s. They work pretty well, so we're going to be using those today. And these metal wheels, these are Intermountain 33-inch metal wheels. I buy them in bulk of 100 at a time, so I still probably have about 2 more packs of these metal wheels left, but we're going to be using these to make today's upgrades. One of the things, or one of the parts that I forgot to mention that we're going to need to make these upgrades, or things that are helpful, are rubber bands. I'm not saying you need them, but they come in handy, especially since we're going to be gluing small parts. And I'll show you what we're going to repair here on these cars in a couple of seconds. But it also helps to have some rubber bands, some small ones to hold the parts together. You don't want too much tension or too much pressure on this stuff as you're holding it together, but every little thing helps. When I unbox these things, I check them, especially even though they're listed as new, what you want to watch out for. You don't need to apply a whole lot of pressure, but some of the things you want to watch is making sure that these parts are together. One of the things that I noticed when I unbox these, you see that that's loose right there. This end is loose over here also, so we're going to need to glue that together. Also on this particular car, this part for the air system underneath the car was broken off and laying in the bottom of the box. It's a good thing that I saw that. Now granted, these repairs aren't much, but they do need to be made, especially if you plan on handling your stuff while it's on the layout. These small parts are delicate, and if you go to pick something up and it's loose and it ends up breaking off and falling out of your hand, you're just going to have more problems down the road. These are going to be relatively simple. The worst part, or the longest part, is going to be waiting for the glue to dry. Now on this particular model, as you can see, I mentioned in the beginning of the video, it's got plastic wheels and plastic couplers, so we're going to be changing those things out to Intermountain metal wheels and KD number 5. But you can see here, taking this stuff off is going to be relatively easy, and it should only take a couple of minutes to do that. On this car here, the side rails are a little bit worse. This comes apart almost all the way or halfway back down the car. You see how loose that is? So we're going to need to glue that and fix that. If you tried to pick this up off your layout and that came apart and slipped out of your hands, you'd probably just be crying the blues and wish you wouldn't have spent 30 bucks on such cheap stuff. But it's really not cheap. These things happen. Even though it's listed new, I didn't give them a bad mark on eBay. I think this box could have been dropped at one time or another. That's why you see these loose or broken parts. But these are going to be some simple repairs, so let's go ahead and get started. Even when making simple repairs, a little bit of planning goes a long way. As we stated, we're going to be gluing parts. changing out wheels and changing out the coupler. But if you notice here, the coupler box is underneath the truck or the wheel assembly, and if you try to glue the parts and use the rubber bands to hold that all together, the rubber band, especially since we're going to be doing the ends, are going to be in the way of the coupler box and the truck. So like I said, a little bit of planning goes a long way. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the trucks off, replace the wheels, and when we have that off, replace the coupler box, put everything back together, do the gluing, and put the rubber bands on last, and leave it sit till tomorrow. So let's go ahead and using our Phillips head screwdriver, let's go ahead and remove the truck. There's 3 Phillips head screws that hold the coupler box with the coupler pocket together, so we just need to take those out. Okay, when you take the cover off for the coupler pocket, be careful. You don't want any extra stuff falling out of there that you might lose or need later, but these are pretty simple. So we're just going to get rid of the old plastic coupler. Grab our KD number 5. Need to get the return spring in there. And also when you're doing this too, be careful, because believe it or not, there was actually 2 of them stuck together. See how that just lays right in there? When you grab a KD number 5, here's a really another good example. When you grab your KD, you want to check and make sure it has all the parts also. This one's missing a spring, so that spring fell out of there. Let's grab one that's got all the parts. See, we've got our spring on there. So return the coupler to its position. Remember that when you're doing this, you're working upside down, so you want to put the coupler in upside down. Hold that together. Put our coupler box on there. I'm just going to hold it temporarily. I get the screws started in there. Say having a magnetic tip screwdriver helps. You don't want to over tighten these, especially on your coupler, because you want to make sure that they return to center, either coupling or uncoupling. Okay, that works pretty good, so that coupler box is done. Now on the trucks, taking the wheels out of the trucks is relatively easy. All you need to do is just spread the truck apart and the wheels will fall out of there. Put the plastic ones aside. If you notice on these, one side is insulated and one side is not. Now, as a habit, I usually put my insulated side on my metal wheels and metal axles all on the same side, so that way they're consistent. You just need to see, if you could just barely see in there, there's a insulated ring around that axle that keeps the track from shorting out when you put it on there. So I'm just going to make sure that put them together. I'm going to put my wheels in the truck. See how nice and smooth that spins? A lot better than plastic. Here's my other wheel. Make sure it spins. I think it'll spin forever. So now I'm just going to remount this back in here. Now when you tighten your trucks back down, make sure some of these you can over tighten, but you want to make sure that that pivots and swings freely, just like that. So this end is done. I'm going to do that to the other ones, but I don't think I need to show that in a recording. So I'll be back in a few minutes to get this squared away. Changing out the couplers and the wheels, and as you can see, got KD number 5s on each end. I got intermount metal wheels. These things spin nice and free. It's going to reduce a lot of friction as you're trying to pull it around the layout. Fortunately for me, the next step with gluing is going to be these side rails that are loose, and luckily they're both on the same side of the car. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab a piece of scrap paper and some glue, dab it on there, and touch these up. Toothpick with just a little bit of glue on there. We're going to dab it in there on the side. Press it together for just a couple of seconds because I want the glue to start to set. I'm going to do the other end down here. Might be slightly out of focus for you, but you'll see the concept. So now that those are glued, I'm just going to take some rubber bands and wrap them around the ends to hold it together. Okay, as you can see, I've got the rubber bands around there holding the parts together. You just need enough pressure to hold the parts together while the glue sets. So this time tomorrow, this will be together and you probably won't even notice it. Now the last thing that we need to do is we need to glue the part of the air brake assembly onto the bottom of the car. And as with anything, you always want to test fit stuff before you actually glue it in place. And you see that that part will go right there. So we're just going to glue that in place. I say it's just going to take a little bit of our glue, put it in the hole there. Take our part, make sure that it sets down in there. It's got a pin and a hole that it sits in. And there you go. Okay, this is the second car, and as you can see, this one's a lot looser than the other one. So as we stated, we're just going to take some of our glue, dab it onto that piece of paper, grab our Q-tip, or I'm sorry, our toothpick, put some glue on the end, dab it in the areas that are going to make contact here. so that we can get this to set and hold. That way tomorrow we're going to have a nice solid piece of rolling stock. So we've got glue in all the points of contact. Press it back together. Use our rubber bands to hold things together. Okay, and there you can see, and once the glue dries, we'll have a finished product. You can see I've got the rubber bands set on there with just enough tension or pressure to hold them together. These plastic parts are delicate, so you don't want to overdo it, but that's pretty much it for this repair and upgrade. And as you can see, I've got the couplers and the metal wheels on there. So this time tomorrow, we should have a pretty solid piece of rolling stock with no loose or missing parts. Well, that does it for this session. I hope you learned something on making some simple repairs and some minor upgrades to your rolling stock. And as always, thanks for watching.